squares populate.
Yeah. So do you want me to just welcome everybody, Megan, and then hand it to you?
Sounds good.
Okay. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Beth Ferry. If you don't know who I am, I'm sure you don't, but I'm a professor in the School of Education and an associate dean for research as well. My work is really focused on disability studies, so I'm really interested in today's talk and excited to be here. On behalf of the Center on Disability and Inclusion in the School of Ed, we are pleased to welcome um, practicing artist, former NYU visiting scholar Chanika Svetvilas, whose interdisciplinary work focuses on the lived experience of mental health difference, the impact of stigma, and the lack of access to care. This event is sponsored by the Center on Disability and Inclusion and the neurodiversity community at SU, a CDI project in support of autistic and neurodivergent matriculated students at SU. The neurodiversity community at SU is supported through a gift from Karen Kolapetro Siebold, and you can learn more about the CDI and the neurodiversity campus events and resources on our CDI website. I thank you for being with us today, and I'm going to hand things over to Megan Krasinski, who's a doctoral candidate in inclusive special education, women's and gender studies, and disability studies to introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Beth. I'm thrilled that Chanika Svetvilas is joining us today to share her work and discuss MAD methods. As we head into Disability Pride Month next week, we are so excited to have her here as her work embodies the creative intersections of neurodiversity and MAD pride, challenging oppressive systems through artistic expression. Chanika is an interdisciplinary artist and cultural worker whose practice focuses on mental health difference. She was the Ida B. Wells Just Data Lab Artist in Residence at Princeton University, a visiting scholar at the Asia and Pacific American Institute at New York University, and an inaugural artist in residence at Mercer County Community College. Svetvila's work has been published in many journals and edited collections, including Disability Studies Quarterly and A Body You Can Talk To, an anthology of contemporary disability edited by Tennyson S. Black. She was the co-founder of Thai Links, a collective that was based in New York City and promoted awareness about issues affecting the Thai American community. Svetvilas was born in Buffalo, New York, to Thai immigrant parents. She earned her BS from Skidmore College and an MFA in interdisciplinary arts from Goddard College. Chanika currently resides in Princeton, New Jersey. To learn more about her, visit our event website or her website, which is chanikasvetvilas.com, or her Instagram of the same handle. And I would put those in the chat in just a second. And so Chanika, welcome, and I will pass it to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'd like to thank Dean Ferry for the introduction, and also to Megan Krasinski for the invitation, and to Micah Fialka Feldman, hope I pronounced that correctly, for his support as well. And especially for the sponsorship of the neurodiversity community at Syracuse University for sponsoring my talk. I really appreciate it. I just want to also just introduce myself with a visual description. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a Thai American middle-aged woman with light brown skin. My dyed reddish brown hair is asymmetrically cut. It's ear length on one side and chin length on the other. I'm wearing black rimmed eyeglasses with the bottom rim pink. And I might take them off from time to time to look at my notes. And I'm wearing a vintage sleeveless shell dress that has woven multicolored stripes, predominantly red, green, and blue. And I'm wearing multicolored earrings to match that look like dangling grapes, but you can only see one because of my haircut. And I'm wearing peach lipstick for this occasion. My background is blurred, but it's sort of an off-white wall, and that's so you can't see the mess in my apartment. And I have a lime green mug that I might sip from time to time. And I'd like to begin, as you can see on the screen, with a grounding exercise. So sometimes I feel like we forget that we're living, breathing animals, mammals. And taking a breath for me is also a way to give myself some support. And so I invite you to join me to just soften your eyes. You can close them if that's accessible to you, and just take a deep breath. Like sometimes we just forget that we're breathing. So just take a deep breath and exhale when you're ready. And then take another breath. And as you do, release any tension in your body, your shoulders, your neck, and loosen and shake out any tension if you can. And now, with your next breath, consider the land beneath you and every living thing that has supported you. And think about what care and support have you received that allowed you to arrive at this moment in time, and give thanks. And now slowly grow aware of your surroundings again, and open your eyes if they were closed. So thank you for joining me in that exercise. And Before we begin, I also want to give a content warning because my work focuses on mental health. I will be speaking on my own experience as someone who has bipolar and topics that touch on hospitalization and suicide. So I just encourage you to take care of yourself. And that could mean tuning out or taking a bio break or stretching, walking away, whatever it means to take care of yourself. So I encourage you to do that. Um, and so next slide. So I'm an interdisciplinary artist. My art practice intersects with my mad lived mental health experience and disability. And I'm also a multidisciplinary artist, and that means I work in a broad range of media. So I often say that my medium is the question, and that determines my choice of medium. And that can include drawing, sculpture, installation, video, performative action, and mixed media. And so I do like to work large in scale. Sometimes I say it's a way for me to shout and be visible. Here I am standing in dressed in black and white in the middle of two charcoal drawings that also incorporate collage. And there's a lot of different graphic motifs in the drawings. Um, I just also want to give you a little background to the work. As I mentioned, my lived experience um, has been with my diagnosis of bipolar. I was diagnosed at age 24, but I did have what I call many blips before that. I just didn't get the diagnosis till the age of 24. And the reason I received that diagnosis was because I had a severe manic episode that led to hospitalization. Um, and I during the hospitalization, I felt more traumatized by that experience than the mania itself. And that unfortunately has been my experience with my hospitalizations. Um, these experiences have had a big influence on my art practice and the type of motifs that I use. Like, for instance, very often I will draw an exit sign, but I'll have it in reverse or upside down. And that's because I'm thinking about which side of the exit are you on? Because when you're hospitalized for mental health difference, you're under lockdown. And I also talk in my work about what is care, right? Because just receiving medical care does not necessarily mean it's care, it's just treatment, but it's not always given with care. Um, and I was hospitalized for the second time after overdosing on sleeping pills. And so I have this very prominent memory of spewing up activated charcoal after my stomach was pumped. And this is why I use charcoal in my drawing. I know for the disability studies class, there's mention that one of the assignments is bringing artifacts. So I would say charcoal is one of my artifacts. Then I also use a medical archive of everything from pharmacy paper bags to medication guides, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and pages from the book, and also workbooks from my hospitalization and medical documentation. So I also use rice paste with my drawings. And I use rice paste because not only is it non-toxic, but also I use rice paste because I remember my mom sealing her letters to my grandma that she would send to Thailand, sealed with rice paste. Um, and we can go on to the next slide. So, as was mentioned, I was a former artist in residence at the Ida B. Wells Just Data Lab. So I just want to acknowledge the lab that gave me support, and because it was a very important part of allowing my work to be realized. And so the Ida B. Wells Just Data Lab, it was founded and is currently directed by Dr. Ruha Benjamin. Its home is in the African American Studies Department, and it brings together students, educators, activists, and artists so that they can develop a critical and creative approach to data conception, production, and circulation. And so it's an opportunity to make those connections between stories and statistics, power and technology, data and justice. And it was a great opportunity for me to work with undergraduate research associates. I also worked with graduate research associates. And so they work in collaboration with organizations and other research projects, and they were working in collaboration with mine. And so it was definitely a symbiosis of working together. Next slide. And you can click again. So Anonymous was the data was my project. That was the name of it. And the project started with a survey. It took a whole semester to design the survey because we wanted to be very intentional. And I also had a committee, a sort of informal committee made up of disability activists, disability studies, uh, researcher, and also a family therapist counselor who self-identified as Asian American. And I worked with the research associates to create the survey. It was important for me to not name what is that identity. People self-identified as Asian American and Pacific Islander or Pacific Islander um, uh, because I didn't want it to be specific to citizenship. So you didn't have to be a citizen to name yourself as Asian American, and they also didn't have to have a diagnosis. So you can click again. So and that was important that that it wasn't a requirement that they have a medical diagnosis because stigma is prominent within the AAPI community, and therefore they might not necessarily seek out medical care for a diagnosis. Um, Next slide. This is an artwork by Finnegan Shannon. It's a blue couch, and it says, "It was hard to get here. Rest here if you agree." And she's had those benches placed in museums to acknowledge the need for rest. And you can click again. So, as a part of working with the research associates, it was very important that it not just be the what, the content of the work, but the how. And so I encourage them to practice script time, which is a challenge, I know, in a university setting. And in Crip Time, some of you might already be aware, is a concept arising from disabled experience, and it addresses the ways that disabled and chronically ill and neurodivergent people experience time and space differently. So I was very aware that sometimes a student might need a nap, or maybe they need a shift in the deadline, and we would just adjust. Click again. And we also use care as a modality, and that's being intentional that centers collective care and checking in with each other and adapting to the needs of the team. Click again. And so I just wanted to give you a preview of what that project analysis of the data looks like, but then I'll go in more detail. So this is a solo show that was at Princeton University. On the walls are some of my charcoal drawings. And then in the center, about 25 feet by 25 feet, is the analysis with the data installation. There's sort of an amoebic artificial grass on the floor, and that's to guide uh, people with low vision or blind folks who need to have a prompt as to where the sculpture begins and ends. But it's also a way to link all the sculptures together as a community because each pole represents an individual and they're multicolored, representing different intersectional identities. Next slide. So some of the questions on the survey I will share with you. So in addition to the questions of intersectional identity that asks, their gender identity, their sexuality, their employment status, and their ethnicity and their home state, et cetera. I also asked specific questions regarding their care and support. So one of the questions was, what kinds of support and care would you prefer to receive? And you can click again. Um, and so you can keep clicking. So time, rest, emotional consideration and care, job seeking support, government assistant, housing support, social worker, workplace accommodation and understanding, peer and family emotional support. So I forgot to mention that the ages of the people that participated were ages 18 to 44. And the heights of the poles were adjusted, representing their age. So the taller the pole, the older they were. Next slide. And these are more, you can keep clicking more responses. Would like more access to traditional healing methods, support geared towards harm reduction that is adapted to my specific culture. I would like to have an API counselor or support person who understands the nuances of my cultural experience and who can meet my needs contextually. Next slide. And this is another question. Have you experienced stigma or discrimination because of your mental health difference? I think being Asian American, mental health is a topic that is often stigmatized. And I think because in a general way, generational teaching have been passed down, people are not as outwardly expressive in emotion, which sometimes leads others to assume that Asian Americans don't struggle as much or often with mental health. I had a hard time getting people to take my problems seriously. Next slide. Do you or have you discussed your support needs with friends or family? Why or why not? You can click through. I struggle still to find a balance with reaching out to my friends. I'm definitely still afraid to, and I recently went through a hard breakup where one of the reasons citing for my partner leaving me was that it was hard to take care of a depressed person. I'm not saying that it's not hard, but I think that I'm now more than ever incredibly cautious about showing any aspect of mental illness, as I don't want to drive people away or put them in positions that force burdens onto them. Next slide. Another response. No, I have had negative experiences where friends or family have strongly pushed for my hospitalization against my will. My family also does not really understand mental health and sees it as a taboo topic, one that can be addressed with faith or religion. And click again. I have with my friends and husband, but not with my parents or extended family. I feel that my friends and husband who are around my age don't have a stigma associated with mental health. They see it as something that can and should be managed like any other chronic illness. And I feel safe to share them without fear they would judge me. Next slide. So how did I map this data onto 3D printed sculpture, which was the continuum of the process of, why have a survey and what was I going to do with the data? So the initial idea was that each data shape would be a response to the survey. And so I decided that instead of using one algorithm to generate the 3D printed sculptures, I wanted to correct the process. I wanted to slow it down. And I also wanted to create the shapes that would adhere to the cylinder of the orange prescription bottle, um, that were organic to be a contrast to the generic um, bottle, the medical bottle, which is why I used organic shapes. Next slide. And the right was some drawings of shapes. And so here you can see the shapes that I created with the research associates. And they're attached with bands. And this is so that the sculpture could be touched. I had a resource corner in the exhibit where people could also disassemble and assemble prescription bottles with different data points. So this slide shows the bands and the different data shapes on a diagonal in orange color. Next slide. And this is a prototype. You have the cylinder of the orange prescription bottle and the usual white cap that you push down and turn to open. And then you have the orange data shapes that are organically shaped that snap on with bands. Next slide. And so the research associates and I also gave a lot of thought as to what kind of material we would use to print the 3D sculptures, because we were all aware that prescription bottles are plastic, which goes into landfills. And that was one of the reasons I started working with prescription bottles. I create other sculptures with prescription bottles that are donated for my sculptures. And I was very aware that the contents were not reflected in the packaging, because medication can be exorbitant in costs and inaccessible. And then they also can have side effects that is more debilitating than the condition being treated. So I started working with prescription bottles to reflect those conditions instead of just being all the same orange bottles. So you can click. But we did land on PLA. We decided that we didn't want the material to just be a gimmick if we couldn't really research it in depth, because we had very limited time. So we just landed on PLA. You can click again. And so PLA is polylactic acid, and you can keep clicking. So it's material that is not made with fossil fuels. Instead, it's a thermoplastic monomer, and it's made from renewable organic sources such as cornstarch or sugarcane. And that's the material we use. You can click again. Or yeah, forward the slide. And these are PVC pipe. That's the poles that the 3D printed sculptures were mounted on. And you can click again. So PVC is a polyvinyl chloride, and you might already be familiar with the pipes. They're used for plumbing, sewage, drainage systems, drinking water, and irrigation systems, and all sorts of ways for including recreation purposes. So I like that they were so multi-use, very accessible in that way, and also accessible in cost. Next slide. And so here's one of the PVC pipes mounted into a masonite sort of material for the base. And this is red. So I reflected the intersection identities into the poles. So red was male, yellow was female, orange was non-binary. You can keep clicking. And then I also used blankets and comforters and different wrappings that I hand sewed. So I crimped the process. I could have used my sewing machine, but I wanted an intimate relationship, as if this was a person, and to sew it on by hand, so that I was almost like having a conversation with this individual, and giving it care. And click again. And then I had different flowers representing different ethnicities. So it's the flower of the country. So peony, for example, it was Chinese. Some had multiple ethnicities. So some had more than one type of flower. Click again. And bluebirds, that's the state flower of New York. I'm flower, sorry, state bird of New York. So the different birds represented different states of where they live, and click again. And there were different trimmings that represented their sexual identity. Like this rainbow color was a queer identity. So however they wanted to identify their sexuality. I also had gold, silver in different ways that represented whether they're a student, unemployed, hourly worker, or salaried. Click again. And then I also, for people, not everyone self-identified as having a disability, but those that did, I gave bells. And the idea of having them be heard, and then click again. And then I also gave all the sculptures spoons. I wrapped them in spoons. Each one had one. And so some of you might be familiar with spoon theory, which was a term coined by Christine Miserandino. And she wanted to describe her experience with lupus, and she used spoons as a metaphor for energy. And so she created this spoon theory, which the disability community very often uses in terms of how many spoons they have left, representing how much energy they have. Next slide. And you can click again. As I was wrapping the polls, it reminded me of a custom in Thailand, um, uh, which although it's a Buddhist, primarily a Buddhist country, there are other religions present, but Buddhism actually is the national religion there. But they're also animists, the belief that is a spirit in all things, both animate and inanimate. And so P Dunmai is P is spirit, and Dunmai is tree. They believe specifically this Bodhi tree, you can click, is sacred, and so they will wrap the trees in silks to protect them. And the Bodhi tree is also where Buddha gained enlightenment. So as I was wrapping um, these sculptures, it made me feel that I was also giving them a blessing and protecting them and honoring the spirit within these sculptures. Next slide. And so here's a close-up of the sculptures. And each sculpture also had a tag with a QR code. And so the students, in addition to my research associates, some other students volunteered to create a script from each survey response and to read it in the first person. So each one has an audio recording. And then about 30% wanted to be videotaped. And they were very vocal about being visible because they felt that they were advocates. And so some of the QR codes led to videos. And in the exhibition space, there was also a video loop of the people that were interviewed. Next slide. And so here you can play this is the video of the exhibit to give you a little better sense. And I will say at the end, as I was getting closer to the exhibition opening, I realized you can see the QR code. In the coins, which represented part-time employment. I realized that I didn't want to focus so much on the individual data points. Originally, I thought I would have a chart with all the data and what each shape represented. But then I threw out all that information because I didn't want people to focus on the data, the centrifuge of data. I wanted to focus on the individual stories. So it was more important that people interact with the work and be able to hear and read. They could also read the transcript of the QR codes. So that they recognized that each sculpture was an individual. And there was space so you could walk onto the grass, and you could also wheel onto the grass with a mobile device. So there was a path there, so you could also reach the QR codes. And also, as I mentioned, a way to give a visual cue for people that needed to know where the installation was. Next slide. And so I wanted to share this community care project. Is this community care exchange. I understand that for the students of the Introduction to Disability Studies, they will be creating a campus project proposal about inclusion and accessibility, equity on campus. So I thought this would be a fun project to share. This project was obviously outdoors and on-site. It was a public art project that was part of a performance festival called Art in Odd Places that took place in October in New York City. The performances took place on 14th Street, from the east side to the west side, so all 12 blocks over. And my project, the Community Care Exchange, was focused on care and the complexities of care. And I took a walker and converted it into a booth, as if it was a window for a pharmacy. And that's why it says drop off and pick up. The QR code leads to mental health resources on my website. I took a walker and uh, put in holes in a multi-gallon plastic storage container and inverted it, and to create the box, and then use the PVC pipe as poles to hold up the community care exchange sign. And so I wheeled that to different sites along 14th Street. And next slide. Um, and so as you can see, I'm wearing prescription bottles from top to bottom on my helmet and on the hoop skirt. And each so I had clipboards with slips of paper, and so I invited the audience or people, the passersby, to write a prescription of care and support for a stranger, and they would receive one that someone else wrote in exchange. um, and during those times was also an opportunity to talk about what care and support meant to them, and also the fact that sometimes we receive care or that someone might think is care, but it's not necessarily the kind of care we want. And we even have that experience from friends and family, right? That they want to participate and give care, but sometimes they don't know because they didn't ask, what is it that we want? And then also in hospitals, you're getting treatment, but it is not necessarily given with care. Um, and so it was an opportunity to exchange those notes of care and support and affirmation, but also to have those conversations. And some opened the bottle right there, and some took it with them and wanted to open it at a special time for themselves. Some wrote in other languages. You can click to the next slide. Oops, I thought I must have, oh, you can go back. Sorry, I thought I had an example of some of the messages in the slide, but I think I forgot to include that. But I invited people also to write in their own language. Like some people wrote in Spanish, and luckily there were other people who spoke Spanish who needed a Spanish language one. So I was able to do that. Some of the kids did drawings. Um, and I distributed over 100. And so I just carried them in my hoop skirt. And so every time someone came, I would take one from the hoop skirt, and they would roll up the message and insert it in the bottle. And then I would take another one for my hoop skirt that someone else wrote, and I would give it to them. And next slide. So here are some of the sculptures I made with prescription bottles. And again, as I mentioned, I thought, the prescription bottles should reflect the contents. And so I started embellishing them with beads. On the left is a flying pig, that saying, when pigs fly, with a party hat. And the prescription bottle has doll legs. They're sticking up with the feet in the air as if it's riding the pig upside down. And on the right is a stag deer with antlers, and then twin conjoined prescription bottles with doll arms, one on each side, and embellished with silver mirrored um, beads and orange beads. Next slide. And here's another pig on the left with arms riding a pig embellished with gold beads and doll arms with purplish violet short sleeves, puff sleeves. And then on the right is another prescription bottle with legs in the air and the feet pointing upwards. This is upside down, riding a calf with multicolored and mirrored beads. The next slide. And this is just a video of some of the other sculptures I've made with prescription bottles. This one has a spoon representing spoon theory and anthurium because of the prominent stigma. So I like the idea of the double entendre, what stigma means. It's also part of the anatomy of the flower for pollination. This one has a mirror in its sort of mouth with beaded nails sticking out the back and flowers at the top. And this one has white gold tipped feathers and a gold chain and gold beading. That one's called Icarus, by the way. And this one has octopus legs with doll arms and beading that's orange and gold. And so I also melt the bottles too. This one has a swirling, spiraling, gold beaded line coming out the top of the cap with a bell at the end. And this one's called Whimsy. It also has a bell and butterfly wings and a lizard tail and sequins and legs made from beaded nails. And this one is conjoined, the prescription bottles with mirrored beading on the bottom and one eye in each prescription bottle and arms. And this one has safety pins. I like the irony that they're safety pins, but they're poking through with superhero arms and mirrored beading. And this one has a cow looking into a prescription bottle that's beaded with silver mirrored like beads. I often use mirrors in my work because of reflection. And this one is called Prickly, and it has legs that are over the edge sitting. And you can stop it there because those are repeats. And you can go to the last slide. So thank you so much for listening. I welcome questions. You can get in touch with me through Instagram or my email. And please feel free to visit my website and you can see my other work there, my projects and upcoming shows.
So I'm
So
going to
I
stop
welcome any questions.
recording if anybody has questions. Yep. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries, no worries.